My name is Ava Mitchell. I'm 23, and this morning I graduated from Carolina Western University with top honors. I walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, and smiled for the cameras, all while my parents clapped politely from the front row, utterly unaware of what was coming next. I wish I could say that moment felt like a fairy tale ending, but the truth is, it was years in the making, built on exhaustion, rejection, and this quiet, clawing hunger to be seen. Something changed today, a shift I could feel in my chest, and in just a few minutes, during the final part of the ceremony, it would all click into place, for them, for everyone. But before I reveal the moment their proud faces froze into ash, let me take you back to where it all began. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing the spread of night owls. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. From the outside, our house on Cherrywood Lane looked like a Hallmark postcard. White siding, green shutters, two-car garage. Mom kept geraniums in color-coded pots. Every Sunday, she made pancakes shaped like letters of our names. A for Ava, G for Grace. But I always got the slightly burned ones. My parents, Greg and Karen Mitchell, ran a tight, upper-middle-class ship in Springfield, Missouri. Dad was a financial planner. Mom ran a home design blog with too many followers. Grace, my younger sister by 2 years, was their son. And me? I was the backup plan. Even as kids, it was clear. Grace got the shiny toys, the singing lessons, the future leader tote bags from summer camp. I got hand-me-downs, quiet praise from teachers, and later the growing weight of knowing that no matter what I did, I was never quite the chosen daughter. I remember one Christmas, Grace unwrapped an iPad. I got a planner with "Be Productive" on the front. Mom said it was because I liked organizing things. What no one saw were the tiny, cruel cuts those moments left, death by 1,000 dismissals. And for a while, I convinced myself it was fine. I worked hard, got straight A's, started designing logos for small businesses in our neighborhood at 16. I thought effort would equal recognition, that if I built myself big enough, bright enough, they'd finally see me. Spoiler, they didn't. Not then. The real fracture came senior year, at the dinner that changed everything. The one where Dad casually told me they'd only saved college money for Grace. "She's the better investment," he said. I still remember the way my fork slipped and clinked against the plate. They had chosen, out loud, officially. I didn't say anything that night, just nodded, excused myself, and sat in the dark of our garage for almost an hour, gripping the steering wheel of my beat-up Camry like it could hold me together. And that's when I decided. I would get to Carolina Western. I'd find a way to pay for it. I'd outwork, outlearn, outlast every expectation they had for me. I would make them eat their words. Not out of vengeance, well, maybe a little, but because deep down, I knew I was more than they were willing to see. And one day, I'd make damn sure the whole world saw it too.
There's something suffocating about a town that believes its own perfection. Springfield wasn't a bad place. It was just a place where things were supposed to stay a certain way. The girls with pageant smiles became cheer captains. The boys with ranch hands for fathers inherited both the trucks and the arrogance. And families like mine were admired. Clean lawn, new Honda, Christmas cards where we all wore matching denim and pretended to laugh. Inside that house, though, was a tension so quiet it never echoed. It just lived. Mom was obsessed with curation. Our pantry looked like a Pinterest board. The throw pillows were rotated every season. So when Grace won spelling bees or got invited to leadership conferences, it was proudly broadcasted to Mom's 12,000 Instagram followers. When I won a state-level digital marketing contest in junior year, She reposted the school announcement to her stories with 3 clapping emojis and moved on. No caption, no post, no "my brilliant girl." That's when I learned. You could be exceptional and still invisible if you weren't the image they wanted. Dad was harder to read. He was all about metrics and return on investment. He'd grill me about how much time I spent on my freelance logo work, asking if I tracked the hours. When I mentioned I was applying for a summer program at CWU's pre-business track, he raised an eyebrow. That out-of-state tuition's steep. Let's not get carried away. I didn't know they'd already started paying Grace's freshman year housing deposit. At school, Grace floated through like she was built for the spotlight. She got the leads in theater, volunteered just enough to look philanthropic, and glided into AP government with a confidence that wasn't earned but inherited. We weren't close. I don't think we ever were. But she wasn't mean, just blind to the unevenness between us. Like most people who are handed things without asking, they didn't notice how heavy the world was for someone carrying it alone. I remember one morning, spring of senior year, she borrowed my car to get to a student council thing and spilled coffee all over the passenger seat. She laughed and said, "Oops, my bad. You still have that old hoodie in the trunk, right?" I said nothing, just drove her afterward with the scent of burnt hazelnut and cheap creamer crawling up my nose. That was Grace. Casual, chaos, untouchable. And me? I kept building my college file. Essays, contest wins, reference letters. I even cold emailed a CWU professor about their digital media lab and got an invitation to a virtual tour. Every step was mine alone. But there was still a tiny part of me, some stubborn, naive flicker that thought, maybe they'd surprise me. That's why the dinner hit so hard. When Dad said they could only fund one college path and had chosen Grace, he didn't even look at me. Mom mumbled something about, "We figured you'd be more independent anyway." It was like watching the final brick be pulled out of a house already leaning. No one asked what I wanted, or how I'd pay for CWU, or if I was okay. They just cleared the plates like it was a regular Thursday. I excused myself, walked upstairs, and opened my laptop. I applied for a federal student aid ID, bookmarked 10 scholarship sites, and typed out this promise to myself in the Notes app. If no one's betting on you, become the odds. That line stayed with me. I still see it when I close my eyes.
The next morning, everything looked the same. Same granite countertop, same creaky cabinet above the fridge, same family-sized box of Cheerios Grace liked, even though she never finished it. But nothing felt the same. I sat at the kitchen table with my FAFSA confirmation printout in my lap like a shield, waiting for someone to acknowledge what happened. Waiting for one parent to say, "We may have gotten this wrong." They didn't. Instead, Mom asked Grace if she wanted to go laptop shopping over the weekend. Dad made some comment about optimizing scholarship buckets like we were discussing mutual funds. And I sat there, eating dry cereal, planning my escape. That weekend, I drove 2 hours east to visit Nana June. Her lake house had always felt like a different planet. Mismatched mugs, smell of cinnamon and old books, the soft ticking of the cat-shaped kitchen clock. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and said, "Talk." So I did. I told her everything. How Grace was getting it all, the tuition, the dorm, the shopping trips, how I was expected to fend for myself, how I'd kept up a 3.9 GPA and run a side hustle and still somehow ended up the family's plan B. She let me get it all out, no interruptions, just squeezed my hand with those paper-thin fingers that had shelved 1,000 library books. When I was done, she reached behind the bread box and pulled out a box of chamomile tea and said, "You're going anyway. I don't have enough saved. The loans won't cover the first year. Then we find another way." She couldn't give me money.
Her pension barely covered utilities, but she gave me her 1999 Dell laptop and a yellow folder filled with printed out local scholarships. You'd be surprised how many Rotary clubs want to fund someone scrappy. I spent that weekend writing essays, uploading transcripts, and emailing any community group with $1 to give. I also started researching side gigs in Charlotte, tutoring, barista work, social media freelancing, anything I could do between classes. On the last night, Nana pulled out a blue cloth pouch. Inside was a narrow bracelet, silver, delicately etched with ivy leaves. She said, "This was my mother's. She wore it when she got her GED at 40. Said it made her feel like someone worth investing in." She clasped it around my wrist. "You are someone worth investing in, Ava. They just didn't see it. But you do, and now I do too." I slept that night for the first time in weeks. On the drive home the next morning, I passed a billboard for Carolina Western, where the next generation leads. And I whispered to myself, I will. The betrayal no longer burned, it hardened. I turned it into fuel. I applied to Bean Theory Cafe the second their online job portal opened. I emailed 24 Carolina landlords about split rent. I listed my childhood art commissions portfolio on Fiverr and made my first $75 by the end of the week. And I stopped waiting for anyone at home to ask how it was going, because the next time they looked in my direction, it wouldn't be to offer support, it would be to ask, how did we miss her becoming that?
Charlotte hit me like a freight train wrapped in humidity. The day I moved into my apartment on the edge of East 9th, the AC unit sputtered once and gave up. The paint was peeling, the shower barely drained, and 2 of my 3 new roommates forgot my name within the first hour. I had a single drawer in the shared fridge and a mattress on the floor. My side of the room was separated by a thrifted shower curtain hanging from a PVC pipe. But it was mine. That first week was brutal. I'd wake up at 5:30 to catch the 6:15 bus, open Bean Theory Cafe at 7, sprint to classes from 9:30 to 3, back to the cafe for the closing shift, then study in the storage closet on milk crates with a borrowed lamp. Most nights, I got 4 hours of sleep, if I skipped dinner. My textbooks were all used, covered in other people's highlights. I couldn't afford half the access codes, so I'd find PDFs or beg professors for alternate assignments. The worst part? Pretending I was fine. Group projects were the hardest. Grace would text me selfies of her dorm room, walls dripping in fairy lights, and say stuff like, "Ugh, econ is so hard, LOL. Help?" Meanwhile, I was counting quarters to buy a bag of rice and praying the laundromat didn't eat my only work shirt. But I said yes, every time, because if I stopped, even for a day, the whole fragile system would collapse. By week 4, I had memorized the cafe inventory by smell. I could prep cold brew blindfolded and calculate profit margins in my head faster than most of my classmates could finish a multiple choice test. I started seeing connections between the business classes and my real life. Operations class, that was just scheduling barista shifts and calculating inventory shrink. Marketing, I was running the cafe's TikTok in exchange for an extra $1 an hour. Accounting? Try managing rent, loans, and groceries when your bank balance dances near zero every week. There's a difference between learning theory and living the lesson. One night, I fell asleep on the bus, missed my stop, and ended up walking 2 miles home with blistered feet and a wet bag of expired bakery donations from work. I cried that night. Not the dramatic sobs, the quiet kind. Head against the fridge, too tired to take off my shoes. That was the first time I almost quit. But then I opened my notes app, the one with the promise I wrote months ago. If no one's betting on you, become the odds. And I whispered it aloud. Next morning, I emailed every department on campus asking about scholarships, work study, research assistantships.
I also bought a tiny whiteboard and wrote one sentence on it with a blue dry erase marker. "You're doing the impossible already. Keep going." I stuck it next to the mirror with duct tape. Every morning while brushing my teeth, I stared at those words, and somehow they started to feel true. I first met Cam when I accidentally used their milk. Roommate introductions had been quick. First names, majors, what's your sleep schedule, and please don't steal my food. I was too exhausted to remember anyone's name that first week, just trying not to cry from missing Nana June's quiet kitchen. One night, I came home late after closing the cafe, bone-tired and hungry. Opened the fridge and realized I'd forgotten to buy oat milk for my off-brand cereal. There was a half-full carton on the second shelf. I stared at it for 2 minutes before muttering, "I'll Venmo whoever this is." 10 minutes later, Cam knocked on my door holding the carton and smiling. "You drank my overpriced oat milk and left an apology post-it shaped like a heart." I panicked. "I'm so sorry, I was desperate." They waved me off. "Relax." That was the politest milk theft I've ever seen. Then they handed me a second unopened carton. "This one's yours. Refill my karma someday." From that night on, Cam became my emergency contact and emotional life raft. They were a sociology major with a side gig as a library aide and a knack for making lentil stew out of practically nothing. Their door was always open, their playlists always vibing, and their kindness never felt performative. It was Cam who started noticing. "You know it's not normal to run on 2 hours of sleep, right?" they said one night while we folded laundry on the living room floor. "I'll sleep after midterms," I mumbled. They stared at me. That's what people say before they collapse in lecture halls and get featured in campus newsletters. The next morning, I found a labeled Tupperware in the fridge. "Eat, it's vegan and won't kill you." Cam never asked for anything, but they showed up. Like the time my tote bag ripped on the way back from campus and my textbooks spilled into the rain. Cam met me halfway with a plastic bin and dry socks. Or when I blanked during a practice interview for a business club competition and they clapped anyway, said, "Damn, even your panic is eloquent." It was Cam who first said out loud what I hadn't dared to think. "You're doing more with less than anyone I've met. That's not a sob story, that's power." They helped me build a budget spreadsheet that didn't make me want to scream. They dragged me to a community yoga class. They introduced me to free campus therapy. They even helped me rebrand my freelance services into something legit. Pinpoint Social, strategy for small biz with big ambitions. "You're not just surviving anymore," Cam said one night, crinking their mug against mine. "You're building something. Don't forget that." That winter, we found a coffee-stained couch on the curb, dragged it 4 blocks, and claimed it as our new study throne. We carved our names into the back with a safety pin. Cam plus Ava equals rage and resilience. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. And for the first time since I got to CWU, I didn't feel like I was doing this alone. I had a spare key to Cam's room, a second bowl in their cabinet, a chosen sibling in the middle of the storm. The day I met Dr. Torres, I was 15 minutes late, sweaty from sprinting across campus after a shift that ran long. My backpack zipper had snapped, and I was holding it shut with a binder clip and prayer. It was the first class for ethical branding in the digital age, and every student had already found a seat. I hesitated in the doorway, unsure if I should even walk in. Then, she looked up from the podium, raised one eyebrow and said, "Well, at least you made an entrance." Laughter. My face turned red. But she smiled and motioned me in. "Grab a seat, Ms. Mitchell," I said breathlessly. "Ava Mitchell." "Good. Now tell me, does branding shape behavior or reflect it?" I answered without thinking. "Both. It tells people what to value, then convinces them they already do." Her eyebrows lifted again, this time in approval. That was the moment she decided to keep an eye on me. 3 weeks later, she pulled me aside after class. "I've seen your freelance pitch decks. You've got instinct and teeth. Ever considered research?" I blinked. "Me? Like academic research?" She nodded. "I have a grant. I need a student assistant who actually understands real-world constraints. You've been living the case studies I teach." I started the following Monday. Her office was tucked behind the business library. Organized chaos, whiteboards covered in scribbles, stacks of entrepreneurship journals, mugs with half-finished quotes like, "Well-behaved women rarely..." The project? Studying how micro-businesses in underserved neighborhoods adapted their branding strategies post-pandemic. It was like someone cracked my brain open and said, "All that mess you've been living through? It's marketable insight." I was paid hourly, more than the cafe, and I could set my hours around classes and shifts. For the first time, I didn't feel behind. I felt ahead. I helped her design surveys, analyze results, and write up findings for a conference in Chicago. I even co-presented a small segment over Zoom and didn't faint. She started referring to me in department meetings as my scrappy genius. She also pushed me harder than anyone had ever. "You keep playing small, Ava. You wait for permission when you already have the answer. You don't need a seat at the table, Ava. You need to build your own damn table." That sentence lodged itself under my ribs. With her encouragement and Tam's late-night editing skills, I launched Pinpoint Social officially. I built a one-page website, branded it with bold, playful colors, and offered sliding scale services for small food trucks, local salons, and niche startups around Charlotte. My first client was a Latina-owned empanada truck that needed Instagram help. We doubled her followers in 3 weeks. She paid me in empanadas and $200 in cash. I cried after that, not because of the money, but because it finally felt like the value I brought into the world was being seen and paid for. Dr. Torres noticed. She always did. "You're not just a student anymore," she said one Friday afternoon. "You're a practitioner. Don't forget that when the world tries to put you back in a box." I didn't. I added founder and lead strategist to my LinkedIn bio that same night. And when Grace sent me a selfie from her dorm's wine and cheese mixer that same weekend, asking me if I could proofread her cover letter, I said yes. But this time, I didn't feel small. I felt like someone who had finally cracked the ceiling, then started building stairs for herself, plank by plank.
The knock on my door came just after midnight. I was half asleep on Cam's couch, textbook open across my chest, a cold cup of chai forgotten on the side table. At first, I thought I imagined it. Then came a second knock, soft, hesitant. Cam looked at me from across the room, one eyebrow raised. I opened the door, and there she was. Grace. Her makeup was smudged, hair up in a careless bun, laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Her expression flickered somewhere between desperation and shame. "Hey," she said, voice small. I didn't know where else to go." Cam stood up, clearly assessing the vibe. "You good?" "I think so." Then I turned to Grace. "Come in." She sat at the kitchen table like it was foreign terrain, took a breath, then unloaded. She was failing her senior political science seminar. Her thesis advisor had told her that unless she rewrote her entire methodology section, she might not graduate on time. She didn't understand the research standards, didn't know how to format a literature review, didn't know what primary sources even really meant. And she had 3 weeks. I wanted to say something biting. I almost did. Something like, "Must be hard doing it without a safety net." But then I saw her eyes, wide, wet, and scared. And suddenly the bitterness dissolved. Not because she deserved grace, but because I deserved to be better than the story we were born into. So I nodded. "Okay, show me what you got." We stayed up until 3 a.m. that first night. What she had written was a mess.
Well-intentioned, but fluffy, full of feelings, no backbone. I sat across from her pointing out gaps, explaining citations, sharing rubrics from my research work with Dr. Torres. This isn't about sounding smart. It's about showing your thinking, proving you understand what the question really asks. She nodded, scribbled notes, tried to hide the tremble in her hands. The next day, she came back. And the next. For the first time in years, we were side by side, not in competition, but collaboration. She apologized once, quietly. "I never realized how hard you were working. Mom and Dad always made it sound like you were just intense, overdoing it." I scoffed. Overdoing it? I was working 30 hours a week and eating ramen 6 nights a week while they were buying you duvet sets and bubble lamps. She winced. "I didn't ask them to do that." "I know. But you didn't question it either." Silence. Then she whispered, "I didn't know I was supposed to." And there it was. The chasm between us wasn't just built by favoritism. It was widened by ignorance, by comfort, by convenience. But now she was starting to look down and see the depth. By week 2, her thesis had structure, coherence, logic. She was still stressed, but now she was grounded. One night, while I edited her draft on my laptop, she brought me a cookie from her favorite bakery, placed it next to my keyboard without a word. That cookie hit harder than any of her A+ report cards ever did. Not because it fixed everything, but because it acknowledged something. She saw me now, and sometimes that's the first step towards healing a history.
3 months before graduation, I stood in a hotel ballroom with trembling hands and a clicker that kept slipping between my fingers. This was it. The final round of the National Collegiate Innovation Challenge, hosted by Adobe. The prize? $40,000 in funding, a write-up in Fast Brand Weekly, and a seat at their summer entrepreneur residency. There were 10 of us left, all pitching ventures that had gone from idea to traction during undergrad. Most had co-founders, funding, pitch coaches. Me? I had Kim's thrifted blazer, PowerPoint slides built on a library computer, and a business that lived in the margins of my part-time jobs. Pinpoint Social had grown to 6 regular clients. Food trucks, indie salons, 1 local dog bakery. My edge? Hyper-local strategy. Targeted content, visual identity, and social proof that felt like it came from inside the community, not a corporate outsider. My motto, small biz doesn't mean small brand. When they called my name, I took the stage. The first 30 seconds, my voice was tight. My throat felt like it was shrinking. I kept picturing my parents, probably planning another surprise party for Grace's grad day, still unaware that I'd been living a double life, student by day, strategist by every other hour. But then, I locked eyes with a judge in the second row, a woman in a green blazer, nodding like she understood. So, I exhaled, adjusted the mic, and began again. Most of the businesses I work with can't afford full-service agencies. They're run by immigrants, single moms, 20-somethings who sell candles on folding tables every weekend. But they're smart, scrappy, relentlessly talented. They don't need $1 million campaign. They need translation, a way to tell their story online that's just as powerful as what they do in real life. That's where I come in. I walked them through my process: consultation, brand audit, social templates, local influencer collabs. I showed growth numbers, testimonials, screenshots of before and after Instagram pages. Then I paused. And I didn't build this because it was trendy, I said, quieter now. I built it because I was them. I still am. A student with no safety net, self-funding a degree, branding her own business at 3 a.m. because no one else could see the vision yet. The room went still. Investing in me means investing in a world where brilliance isn't gatekept by capital. It means rewriting what legitimacy looks like in business. Click.
and slide. Silence. Then, thunderous applause. I couldn't tell if it was polite or genuine. I just knew I had said everything I needed to. 2 days later, I got the email. Winner, Ava Mitchell, Pinpoint Social. Cam screamed, Dr. Torres cried. I just sat on the floor of the apartment in my pajamas, holding my phone like it was sacred. The prize money would go into the business, scaling services, maybe hiring 2 student assistants. But the best part, the judges had forwarded my application to Alexander Global, a top consulting firm in Atlanta. They requested an interview. I didn't tell my parents, not yet, because graduation was coming and I had one last surprise to plan. A quiet email from Dean Clark confirmed it. We'd like you to speak at commencement. There will also be special recognitions. Please keep this confidential. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. It was happening. The moment I dreamed of, feared, chased, built. Not for revenge, not anymore, but because someone like me standing center stage meant everything to someone else still sitting in the dark.
The CWU Events Dome pulsed with bodies and energy. Thousands of families packed the seats, their voices echoing like a stadium before kickoff. Programs flapped like fans, balloons bobbed just under the ceiling. I stood in my robe, cap tilted slightly off-center, the silk stole from Nana June heavy on my shoulders. It had ivy stitched in silver thread, just like that bracelet she'd given me. She sat in the front row in her Sunday best, smiling like her whole soul had been waiting for this moment. Next to her were Mom and Dad. They hadn't said much since arriving. Grace had coached them into silence, I'm pretty sure. She'd started calling out their favoritism in subtle but direct ways, skipping their party planning dinners, turning down their graduation gift packages. She sat beside me, gown crisp, mascara waterproof. She squeezed my hand once before the processional began. "You ready to burn the place down?" she whispered. "Always," I replied. The ceremony started like any other. Chancellors and donors, professors in robes with rainbow sashes, students fidgeting with cords and honor medallions. Then, President Harlow stepped to the mic. "Before we close today's ceremony," he said, voice warm, "we have several special recognitions." My stomach tightened. "First, I'd like to invite Ava Mitchell, graduate of the School of Marketing and Innovation, to deliver this year's student address." I walked up to the podium to light applause until President Harlow continued. "Miss Mitchell is this year's class valedictorian, graduating with a 3.96 GPA while simultaneously founding and scaling a digital marketing business now valued at over $120,000. She is the winner of the National Collegiate Innovation Challenge and joins Alexander Global Consulting this summer." Now the applause surged. People craned to see me. Some stood. I stepped to the mic, fingers clenched just tight enough to ground me. I began. 4 years ago, I stood in a kitchen back in Springfield, Missouri, and was told that someone else was a better investment. That if college funds had to be rationed, I wasn't worth the full price tag. A hush fell over the crowd. That night, I didn't scream or cry. I wrote a promise to myself in the notes app of my phone. If no one's betting on you, become the odds. I scanned the audience. My parents stared, as still as statues. Since then, I've worked 30-hour weeks, taken the bus before sunrise, skipped meals to pay for textbooks. I built a business in the spaces no one else looked, found clients in places most consultants ignored, and made sure other scrappy visionaries had a digital voice. People murmured. Heads turned, phones came out. I say this not to boast, but to remind you adversity is not disqualification. It's curriculum. I didn't succeed despite being overlooked. I succeeded because I stopped waiting to be noticed. The last line came softer. Sometimes the people who believe in you the least become the fuel that gets you to places they never imagined you'd reach. Applause again.
louder. Then President Harlow returned. What many don't know is that Ava Mitchell self-financed her entire education. No parental assistance, 2 part-time jobs, and relentless determination. Her story is a testament to resilience and redefinition. I dared a glance at Mom and Dad. Their faces were pale, rigid, frozen in a kind of polite horror. They'd wanted to quietly fade into the background today, but the lights had found them. I stepped down from the podium, heart racing, and took my seat to thunderous applause. Grace's eyes were glassy. She mouthed, "Holy shit." And then Harlow's final announcement landed. In honor of her achievement, the university has established the Ava Mitchell Resilience Fund, awarding future students who pursue excellence despite systemic or familial adversity. I felt something inside me break and rebuild at the same time. A scholarship in my name for the next kid they tell you're too risky. I looked at Nana June. Her smile told me, this is the moment we've waited for. And it was.
After the ceremony, the lawn outside the event dome filled like a carnival. Banners, camera flashes, the occasional rogue champagne pop. I took my time leaving the stage area, winding through professors offering handshakes, students snapping selfies, parents crying like it was the end of the world. Grace found me first, arms flung wide. "You did it," she said, wrapping me in a hug tight enough to hurt. "You torched them, and in heels." Nana June came next. She touched the ivy on my stole like she was blessing it. "Told you, you're worth every bet in the book." We posed for a photo, the 3 of us. Me in the middle, Cam photobombed behind us, holding up peace signs and mouthing boss energy. Then, finally, my parents approached. Tentative, stiff. "Congratulations," Dad said, voice a notch too loud. "Really incredible stuff." Mom nodded. We had no idea. I held their gaze, said nothing. Because what was there to say? That I'd wanted this moment from them for so long, I nearly ruined myself chasing it? That I wasn't sure a congratulations now could mean anything when it had come years too late? Grace stepped forward, arms crossed. "You didn't ask. That's why you didn't know." Dad bristled. "Let's not turn this into a public shaming." Cam, standing behind me, muttered, "Bit late for that." But I took a breath and softened, just slightly. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I made it. Without your help, without your belief, I made it anyway. Mom's eyes welled up. "We want to do better, if you'll let us." I nodded. Not yes, not no, just, "I hear you." We parted ways soon after. They left for the family dinner they'd planned without me. Grace stayed behind. "So, can I come with you and Cam? That reception sounds more my speed anyway." At the School of Marketing reception, the energy was different, real. The faculty hugged me like family. Cam introduced me to everyone as the girl who's gonna buy us a house one day. Dr. Torres handed me a glass of sparkling cider and whispered, "Don't forget where you started." I wouldn't. Jennifer Alexander, founder of Alexander Global, approached me with a smile and a handshake. "We're ready when you are," she said. "Atlanta is waiting." Later that week, I moved into a clean, light-filled apartment 2 blocks from Alexander's HQ. My first paycheck hit. My business, now managed by 2 former interns, kept growing. And with a chunk of my prize money, I made the first donation to the Ava Mitchell Resilience Fund. Its first recipient, a girl from rural Georgia studying accounting while raising her baby sister. Her essay read like a mirror to my past. She cried when I called her personally. She said, "You don't know what this means." But I did, because someone finally made a ladder for me, and now I'd make them for others. Grace and I stayed close. Real sisters, finally. No trophies, no comparison, just quiet understanding and shared roots. Our parents called occasionally. They were awkward but consistent, apologetic without perfection.
maybe that's all they could be. One Sunday, Dad asked if he could help me with my taxes. I said yes. Not because I needed it, but because growth sometimes means offering the forgiveness you wished someone had given you. We don't choose the families we're born into, but we do choose how we grow past them. I didn't just prove my parents wrong, I proved myself right. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or just plain forgotten, you are not invisible. Tell me, what's something you achieved without the support you deserved? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear your story. Like this video if it made you feel seen, subscribe if you're building your own table, and share it with someone who needs a reminder. You don't need permission to become extraordinary.